We'll get rolling here in about 30 seconds. So you'll have a chance to steal a piece of pizza from somebody that wandered away from the table. You know how that goes. They weren't going to be able to eat it all anyway, as far as that goes. Our next reader is someone that I ran into briefly when she was here in town a few years ago to work on some graduate materials. She was a friend of my friend James Cruz, who was another great poet along with her in that same venue at UNL over at Andrews Hall. And she is now living in Omaha. And she does have some books for sale. These are copies of her first book. And she has those at a special reduced rate tonight, just for you. And she also has some great news, which I would like to tell, but I can't do that. She said she's Irish. She wants to do something on her own, along with reading, and so she's going to give us an announcement about her writing. So without further ado, Adrian Koesters.
Actually, Rex and I go back a little farther than he thinks we do, because, but you don't know this.
I don't know this.
When you were doing open mic over at the old Crescent Moon for the Nebraska Summer Writers Conference, that was the first time I read poetry in Lincoln. Was it? You won't say how long ago that was.
4 years.
Well, it was 4 years ago. Was what? So my news is that I'm very happy to share is that my second book of poems has just been accepted for publication. Thanks very much. The first one is called Many Parishes because I grew up in Baltimore and lived there until I was about 16 years old. And we moved a lot, and we had this friend named Joe who used to say we lived in 50 houses, and I think we may have lived in 50 houses. The title Many Parishes came out of that. And then not long after this book was published, I read a review from a very strict East Coast poet, let's call it, who said that everybody's first book was had 3 sections. One was about their childhood, the other was about how they discovered love, and the other was a sort of a mishmash of a bunch of stuff. And I thought, darn it. So I'm going to read a few poems from the first book, Many Parishes, and then some from which poems are now from my second book, as of yesterday. If you ever watched The Wire, my grandmother's house was on the south side of that, so kind of on the white, not really white, but predominantly white end of that. And I grew up in a period of time that it wasn't a particularly safe place to live, and we did a lot of having to sit around because we couldn't go outside. So I'm going to read the first poem from the front room. We slumped in 2 matched chairs and watched through the glass men in hat bands and smokes, girls in coats and gray gloves who strolled on the walk as if they had done it each day since the day they were born, as if they had been born to do it. They moved so well on that old stage, each day, each day, each day, and we stayed put all that while, stared as they blocked out their lives like a page read and read, the light from a blue gel hot on their hair, a smart break in their step, a blind note from out there, as if to tell us, this is how it's done, this is how you do it. And as I mentioned, most of this first section is about my childhood. Michelle went straight to the family. I didn't mess around, I just went straight in. I never heard anything about what Baltimore was called or what it was like or anything, so you hear people calling it Charm City. And our part, I never heard that when I was a kid, and our part of town was called Sowebo, Southwest Baltimore. Never heard it. But this This poem is called Sonnet for Sowebo. And the background of it is, this is somewhat autobiographical, but not completely. But I remember being in 2nd or 3rd grade, and there was a little girl in Chicago who was Jewish who had been snatched up on her way to yeshiva school after her regular school. And it was in the days when that kind of news would be all over the front page of the newspaper, and we had 2 newspapers. And my grandmother said, don't go down to the end of the yard. It's a little narrow cement yard. Don't go down there because somebody will come and snatch you. And so we didn't. But that memory is where this poem came. Sonnet for Sowebo. The 10-year-old spinster sits on the back roof, looking out onto a frame of wire and windows, lined with cotton underwear and lingerie, fathers smoking out onto the slips and house coats, shaded by trees not even God intended to bring out of the garden. She leans out in her undershirt. She hears a radio, crooning something foreign and new from Lemon Street, where her colored sitter lives. And she shrinks from the men who crawl along the back gates to beckon, come on down, sweetheart. I got something over here to show you. And when she waits to come to them, they snarl and command as if she owed it, because she is small and they are not, because they are exposed and need a hand. This next one's called One from the Bookshelf for Boys and Girls, which is an encyclopedia, kids' encyclopedia that we had, and it was our most treasured possession, my sisters and I. And the fairy tale is called Princess Finola and the Dwarf. I've never seen it anywhere else, only in this place, and it inspired this poem. This is the oldest fairy tale, the one you tell yourself when the ducks on your wallpaper turn in the twilight, and the puncture of downstairs voices so sharp in the dark you can't move. The dwarf takes the maiden to a hut, his tongue numb or cut out, just a boy following the drum of a witch who forces him to keep the maid fast and fall in love. But the witch forgets so stupidly, you always think, that every fairy tale holds a good spirit of magic or courage that pities hampered maidens and longs to turn dwarves into kings, especially at the price of pain. So now in the deep dark you ride with him, your bones clutched to his saddle, the landscape so like home, and at last you reach the burned lake. Wrenched by the clouds of raven wings and their shrieks, they swoop and pluck out one eye and then the other. Blood may course down your face to your pillow. Your gown may feel like the very felt of the dwarf's hat, the bedsheets on fire like the lake of his baptism. You fall asleep to raven screams, muddy in your ear. When morning comes and the new day tries to feel like the end of the tale, there's a mare's flank rolling into you still, a kingdom lurking, a roof of thatch burnt through. This one I'd like to read about the day that my grandmother got a new stove while eating cold cuts and whole cucumbers. We watched them set my grandmother's new stove in place like a will after a rich uncle's stroke. They shooed us from the kitchen to feed our rumbling stomachs on the back steps, the ribs of rubber mats scoring grooves into our thighs in their summer shorts, green juice and onion roll crumbs plastering us in the little freeze. How would it match that old kitchen and its turkeys? Brewed tea, radishes floating in Tupperware. The swirled linoleum cracked where they pulled out the old stove, a stone gray mouse fixed to one of its feet. The tin ceiling above, antique as our Aunt Lil upstairs, melting into her counterpane, seemed to sigh, and I wanted to reassure the old things, that we still loved the old things. As they eased the new chrome and black glass into place, the Melmac teacups stained shoddy in the sink, the old icebox slouched a little, like neighborhood kids, brazen, but sure the new guy would have them for lunch when they hit the playground. Then my grandfather fired it up and called us in. We looked away to see my grandmother proud and washed up. We clapped, wandered out again. It would be new tomorrow and for a long time after that. But tonight it was as if someone's father had come back from a long trip or a war, and you knew who he was, but not what he was doing there. It was too much to look at for long. Perhaps my grandmother couldn't sleep that night thinking about the angled blinds of it alone in the kitchen, the scent of new and delivery just below the bedroom. Perhaps she got up, went down the back stairs to the overhead double oven doors taller than she was, and breathed out to it, and it expected her and welcomed her one finger across the chrome edge of it and gave her back a smoky complexion, the lines on her loverless face gone in the black glass door. I'm going to move to the newer poems for just a minute. These I need my glasses for. I have a series, and the middle section here is actually called The Nuns Who Never Existed. They're persona poems. They're all about nuns. And this is one from the second book. It's called A Nun Goes Online. She clicks on the glowing dating screen. The gentleman tells her what's on offer. Some of these tales could be lies, as her assertions that she herself is single, that she enjoys cooking, gardening, outdoor activities. He is made so bold as to mention the hot tub, but gently contends that although the hot rod in the photo has been sold, he has replaced it with another, finer engine still. He must feel her readiness to get on, to load up on extravagant distractions, to make a date of it. He must feel the chimera of that unreasonable specter she already turned into a floodgate of ghosts over screens just like this one. He may sense first to last how tuned up she is, like the car he still craves, and yet how fast and soon she'll be tempted to return, to let in the murderous safety of those electric pages, where they may open, immediate, prosperous, and attuned. The most of the rest of these are were written in Lincoln or about Lincoln. This next one is about a winter that I claimed to a friend hadn't been that bad, and she said, "Are you kidding me? There was a glacier in my driveway." I don't remember what year that was, but it's called This Sunday. Like the music ranchers hear when wolves cry outside, the nights they fear or are lonely and confused, or as men might be digging lamplight fall on a path of ice, that from this window looks like a sidewalk where we were never going to be or talk. Me a little ahead, him insisting, listen to that now, the way his eyes glisten. The first summer I was here, I actually decided, because I was starting school and I'd done this sort of late in life and everything was going to be magnificent, that I would just train for a marathon, to walk it. Turned into a half marathon. I did it. But anyway, so I'd walk out 84th Street as far as I could and then come back and as I was training. But almost every single one of those walks, I ran into some living or not so living animal. This one is called Turtle. The dump trucks and earth trucks barreled by a slim strip of grass next to the highway curb, where I walked alone, where a painted turtle had died after giving birth or losing its long way. I reached down to see if by lifting it would make a move to show it hadn't gone, and maybe the platy helmets jumped from its leather back to my weary hands. The body not still, but stiff, a crimson square showing from its belly like disease. I don't know where I'd have put it had it moved, back to the larger lawn from where it had progressed away, and that I'd make a choice for it, wouldn't I? That it had gone awry, it's heading toward the larger traffic, the wrong-headed thing to do. My walks are both a way and to, a bluff determined to stop giving in, though I know it's not nothing I wanted of you, and nothing, all of what you required, not from me, but from the good late friend you believed I might be. And as I wiped my hands, I thought, then let us walk a little farther out until it's clear that one or more of us is right. This one, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but one of my nicknames in life is Bunny, because rabbits make me sick. They repulse me. Because I had this nightmare decades ago about this yard full of rabbits. And I've not been the same since, and I'm sure Dr. Troy would have something to say about that, but anyway. So of course my good friend, Boyd, calls me Bunny, and this is for him, Bunny. There's a beekeeper who hates rabbits, their pulsing, quivering, flea-pocked bodies. In his nightmares, they choke his front lawn by the decades full, not proliferating, but twitching in that noiseless way rabbits have, hypervigilant of breakdowns in their DNA. He envies their singleness of purpose. He admits he's the laziest of beekeepers. When the rabbits begin to jump in the wake of the largest one who bounces outside the lines, they turn into pond circles of rabbits jumping. Too much. He shoots up after a decade of living on the dry needle from the stash of unmelted Jack he's kept under the sink, like Burt Lancaster kept his bottle of hooch and come back little Sheba. Sure, he thought he'd be different, but the bunny circles were just too damn much. None of us blames him. Many of us are relieved. Some of us are jumping for joy. This one's called 9 Horses, and it was a day that I was walking, so 84th, and then I went down Van Dorn past the golf course there, which is now, I see, a mess. Very sad. Because we need more nail salons, I know that's true. But there was this curve of 9 horses that I encountered there. 9 horses. A curved roan phalanx, thin electric wire, patched ground, ground ivy, thistles, the ditch, the flooding, inimical to division, an arc of nickering, rubbing necks, a sentry, a lust to hear grass, and water spilling down 8 throats. On the return, there will be a golf course, a barn, 2 brown doves, 2 warblers, brassy and yellow. Someone will ride 1 or 2 of the horses unseen. Someone else will have that. The cylindrical presser will see to the lawn. False water will run shy of it. The passerby whistles, cracks a stick on the roadway, as if the 9 could stand to be ruined. Just do a couple more of these. It's called The Visitor. He enters with a cherry cane, hangs his mouth in the hall with his hat. He takes 1 month more than there are to sleep outside in the wet. He makes love to softer women, cropped cedar needles his arms. Shoes drunken and broke, no bottom to his flannel bags, no creak on his steps. We wait up for him, call out his beard at night, brew his hair next morning, bruise his signature where it rests on a paper found in the breakfast cups, the one that signs itself, yours. I have a friend from other graduate school days, Tacoma, M.J. Ayuba, who is a poet in upstate New York. She asked me if I would read a poem for her, and this is the poem I wrote for her, so this is for MJ. 3 days with the long moon. That field nag, old penny swayback, low hawk, 2 ducks in train to a quad of geese, in case. Last dawn told that wasn't so. Late morning now, the fire, the hearth, eggs sitting for the mute plate and fork, this pen making a thing of them. 2 more nights, waterfowl safe and noisy in the dusk, the low rails running flank to the river at midnight. Find what they'll make of that river, this moon. This one is for Ted Kooser, whom I had the great pleasure of working with as a student, and he taught me a great deal about revision, which is cut it all out. So this little poem started out as a much longer poem, and he said, well, why don't you just stop it right here? And of course he was absolutely right. Late summer. From the porch we can see the tops of children's heads in the weeds, brown and yellow mushroom caps. We wonder what they make of being there, what old, odd jobs they are doing. Two-poem warning, so I'll read this poem and then just one more from many parishes. I fell in love with a dog last year who was too much for me. Very, very energetic and terrified of thunder and lightning. So of course we were on a walk and the thunder and lightning came. And that's what this poem came from. The title's "And I Am a Liar." The sky broke this morning over me and a dog, not my dog, a dog who loves everything but the sky breaking. The news was of sun, just that. The empty moon nearly run itself out and ready to grow into a new moon. And the particular sky, you might know it, rolling itself like flannel war bandages, seems jagging with electricity across our brows, the dog filling not with hate but animal fear, which I had too, considering the chain on which the Blessed Mother suspended herself on my neck. If I could run, we would have run, but the dog contented herself with straining the saddle of my shoulders to limit point and banging anything named Achilles in me over the pavement. The news lied this morning. Yes, it was just the news. I'll end with this one. The title's Knotting a Fringe. Knitting, tying knots on sticks, like love, can be restless, careless, compulsive, hell-bent. Bamboo unwound to press into needles or pounded into oily threads. Cotton, tree wool slides off the row like a love note. These wools, ever of exquisite hue in a world where even right things go wrong. Silks requiring no reason, they ravel up and around even the most sedate throats. In all that wealth, still it is the fringe exposes appetite, the making and the wearing. 18 or 24 loops shorn like pile or a turf line, nearly exact, one brief tug taken when the strands find home, defining the end as if bound and determined. Thanks so much.